World War I was a dumpster fire of chaos. Trenches filled with mud and misery, nations scrambling for any advantage, no matter how unhinged. But why? Because when survival's on the line, humans get creative. Really creative. Welcome to Through the Ages. Today, we're exploring 10 of the weirdest plans from World War I that proved World War I wasn't just brutal. It was a glorious mess of desperation. First up, the pigeon-guided missile. Yeah, you heard that right, pigeons. The rats of the sky, steering bombs. So, in 1918, American engineer Charles F. Kettering, a guy with zero bird training experience, designed a prototype missile where live pigeons would peck at a screen to guide explosives to targets. Think of it as World War I's version of Elon Musk tweeting, "What if we just use pigeons?" But worse. These birds were crammed into tiny cockpits, pecking at a screen like a TikTok addict doom-scrolling, except their taps literally aimed a 300-pound bomb. Why did anyone greenlight this? Desperation. The war had devolved into a tech arms race, and everyone was throwing spaghetti at the wall. The logic was just that birds can find their way home, right? Let's weaponize that. And spoiler, it never saw combat. It turns out that pigeons panic when you strap them to explosives. Shocker. Next up, machine guns versus propellers, the OG air drama. It was like if you're in a rickety plane trying to shoot a machine gun, but there's a giant spinning blender right before you. That's World War I air combat in a nutshell. Early pilots rigged up janky fixes like the pusher design. Imagine duct taping a gun to the back of your Uber, or angling guns sideways like, "Maybe bullets will curve, bro." British legend Lano Hawker went full MacGyver, slapping a 45-degree gun on his ride to bag 3 kills and a Victoria Cross. Absolute flex. Then the French tried deflector plates, metal shields on propellers. Sounds smart, until bullets ricocheted like a TikTok prank gone wrong. Cue Anthony Fokker, the Dutch dude who basically coded a no-friendly fire hack. His interrupter gear let German guns sync with propellers, turning their planes into AC-130s of 1916. The result? The Fokker Scourge, a German glow-up so op, Allied pilots were respawning on loop. But wait, Allies finally copied Fokker's homework, right? Sure, but by then the skies were a toxic X. Unavoidable, relentless, and expensive. Imagine finally unlocking the meta weapon, only to realize the game's still rigged. Next up, the Paris gun, a supergun built to terrify. World War I wasn't just trenches and gas masks. It also gave us history's most ridiculous artillery flex. Enter the Paris gun, a German monstrosity designed to hit the French capital from 75 miles away. Let that sink in. In 1918, while everyone else struggled with basic cannons, Germany said, "What if we build a gun so massive it could yeet shells into the stratosphere?" Spoiler, they did. This thing was a 138-ton beast with a barrel longer than a blue whale. Engineers had to account for the Earth's rotation when aiming it. The shells flew so high, 24 miles up, that crews wore oxygen masks to assemble them. The goal? Psychological warfare. Germany couldn't capture Paris, so they settled for shelling it randomly, hoping to break civilian morale. Over 300 shells rained down, killing 250 people and blowing out windows across the city. But the gun was a logistical nightmare. Each shot wore out the barrel so badly, crews had to rebore it and number the shells in order to keep up with the changing diameter. Oh, and after firing just 50 times, the entire barrel had to be replaced. It was less a weapon and more a viral stunt, expensive, impractical, and designed purely to scream, "Look what we can do!" Did it work? Sort of. Parisians panicked, but the damage was minimal. Meanwhile, Germany wasted tons of steel and manpower on a gun that mildly annoyed a city. The Paris gun vanished after the war, but its legacy remains the ultimate "because we could" project, a desperate regime's Hail Mary that prioritized spectacle over strategy. Next up, the Ghost Army, World War I's OG fake news. Imagine a military unit whose weapons were bluffs, bullhorn, and balloons. Meet the Ghost Army. A squad of artists, actors, and sound engineers recruited to troll the enemy with next-level psychological warfare. Their arsenal? Inflatable tanks, fake radio chatter, and speakers blasting phantom troop movements. It's like if a high school theater group went to war and somehow worked. The plan was simple: create so much noise, literal and metaphorical, that the enemy couldn't tell real armies from Hollywood props. They'd roll up to the front lines, inflate their rubber tanks overnight, and blast recordings of marching soldiers. German scouts would report massive troop buildups, only for the army to vanish by dawn. The ghosts even dressed as officers and hung out in cafes, leaking fake intel like, hey, maybe we're attacking here. But here's the twist: it kinda slayed. These shenanigans diverted enemy forces, buying time for real attacks. One stunt tricked Germans into shifting troops away from the D-Day landing zones. Casualty rates dropped where the ghosts operated, proving sometimes lying saves more lives than bullets. Was it risky? Absolutely. If the enemy called their bluff, the ghosts had barely any real weapons. But in a war where brute force ruled, this was 4D chess. The Ghost Army stayed classified for decades, but their legacy? A masterclass in chaos where creativity was the weapon. Next up, the Bat Bomb Project. When science met arson. In 1942, the US military approved a plan so bizarre it sounds like a rejected Indiana Jones plot. Strap tiny incendiary devices to bats, release them over Japanese cities, and let the winged arsonists nest in flammable buildings. The logic? Bats roost in hidden spots, so firebombing them would trigger chaos far worse than traditional raids. The project, dubbed X-Ray, involved freezing thousands of Mexican free-tailed bats into hibernation, attaching timed napalm charges to their bodies, and loading them into bomb-shaped cages. When tested, the bats performed too well. A batch accidentally released during a trial incinerated a US Army airfield hangar. Scientists called it a success until the Navy took over, realized the bats were wildly unpredictable, and shelved the idea in 1944. Why even try? Desperation. Japan's wooden infrastructure was a perfect target, and conventional bombing struggled to reach it. The bats offered a cheap, psychological edge: terror from above, literally in the rafters. But the line between genius and madness vanished when live bats started torching your own bases. The project faded, but its legacy? Proof that war twists logic into knots, where burning down the enemy's house with actual bats seems reasonable. Next plan: the armored tree surveillance stunt. In the quagmire of trench warfare, visibility was life. So the British engineered a solution straight out of a spy novel: fake trees. These hollow, steel-reinforced replicas of battle-damaged trees were planted at night to replace real ones destroyed by artillery. Soldiers inside would sketch enemy positions through peepholes, relaying intel via telephone lines hidden in the roots. The catch? Installing them required crawling into no man's land under cover of darkness, dodging bullets and patrols. One wrong move meant discovery and certain death. Yet these arboreal spies provided critical maps of German trenches, turning Mother Nature into a weapon. A blend of patience, craftsmanship, and sheer audacity. The armored tree was stealth warfare at its most absurd and effective. Next plan: the Livens Projector, gas attack DIY. When chemical warfare became the grim norm, British Major William Livens devised a delivery system so crude it bordered on barbaric. Giant metal tubes buried in the ground, packed with gas canisters of flaming oil. Launched electrically, they'd blanket enemy lines in toxic clouds or firestorms with zero precision. The Livens Projector was the definition of spray and pay. Over 2,000 could fire simultaneously, drenching targets in chaos. In 1917, the Germans got a taste of their own medicine when 4,000 projectors unleashed hell at Cambrai. Cheap, easy to mass produce, and terrifyingly random. It was less a weapon and more a rage-fueled science experiment. Next plan: the Phantom Sniper decoy heads. Snipers dominated the trenches, picking off soldiers who dared peek above the parapet. So, the French crafted lifelike papier-mâché heads, painted with agonized expressions, and hoisted them on poles to bait German marksmen. When a sniper took the shot, the shooter's position was exposed and promptly shelled. Gruesome? Yes. Effective? Surprisingly. These macabre puppets turned psychological warfare into a lethal game of whack-a-mole, saving countless lives by exploiting human impulse. A blend of art, cruelty, and cunning, it proved that sometimes the best defense was a very convincing fake. Next up, the Kettering Bug, World War I's killer drone. Imagine a pilotless biplane buzzing toward enemy lines like a vengeful wasp. Enter the Kettering Bug, America's 1918 answer to trench stalemate, a crude, early drone packed with 180 pounds of explosives. Designed to fly a preset distance using a gyroscopic guidance system, it was meant to crash into targets with Terminator-like determination. The Bug was cheap, disposable, and terrifyingly autonomous, a literal fire-and-forget weapon. But here's the kicker. It was about as reliable as a dollar store parachute. Test flights veered wildly off course, some looping back to stalk their own crews. Engineers dubbed it the Bug for a reason. It was more a pest than precision. Yet, the audacity was undeniable, a machine that turned wind speed and gear ratios into a death algorithm. Though never deployed, the Bug foreshadowed modern warfare's cold, mechanical future, where humans cede control to clattering metal ghosts. Final, the illusion of Paris, a city built to die. In 1918, France constructed a decoy Paris, complete with wooden factories, papier-mâché train stations, and fake streetlights, just outside the real city. The goal? Trick German bombers into wasting payloads on a hollow replica. Architects replicated the scene's curves and even mimicked the glow of nightlife with carefully timed flares. It was propaganda as performance art, a lifeless stage set masquerading as a metropolis. But the plan had a fatal flaw: timing. The war ended before the fake city could premiere, yet its existence speaks volumes. This wasn't just deception. It was a Hail Mary born of existential dread. A nation so desperate to survive, the replica Paris never burned, but its legacy lingers as a monument to humanity's capacity for both genius and delusion when staring into the abyss. Which idea fascinated you the most, or what topic would you like us to cover next? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Once again, thank you so much for watching through the ages. We'll see you in the next one.